It was Christmas Eve last year when I received a call from hospice. I was asked to visit a young man named Michael. When I arrived at hospice, I met a young man who was about 25 years old and who was dying of AIDS. He had tubes going in and out of his body. He could not speak because he had tubes in his nose and mouth, and he had tubes coming out of his abdomen. The young man was very distressed and was having periodic seizures. The staff at the hospice had told me that Michael had been hanging on for dear life, anxious, afraid, and angry. He couldn't let go. He could not talk, but he could write. He had a pencil and a large tablet. It took him an excruciatingly long time to even write one single word, and so for 40 minutes he wrote little words and things. I felt increasingly distressed and ineffectual. I didn't know if it frightened him to see me. I was wearing a clerical collar, or if he just didn't know who I was. But what was even more distressing was the concern of whether I was being more hurtful than helpful. I sat there for several minutes, and finally he wrote the words, "Help me." I said, "Michael, I don't know how I can help you, but I can pray for you. Would you like me to pray for you?" He sort of nodded, yes, so I touched his head and began to pray for him. As I prayed, tears came down his eyes, and I began to cry as well. When I had finished praying, he looked at me and wrote on his pad, "This is a hospice. What are you doing here?" That was a profound question. It was Christmas Eve. This was a hospice. What am I doing here? I just looked at him and said, "Well, right now, I'm crying with you." That was about all I could manage. He wrote, "What church?" And I said, "Metropolitan Community Church." He didn't know what that was, so I told him the story of MCC and Troy Perry. I told him I was a lesbian, and I could see all this was news to him. Hours, days before his death, he first hears of the possibility of gays and lesbians in church. I was filled with a sense of poignancy and pathos. Here was a dying gay man who had never been able to put his sexual orientation and faith together. And now, because of his situation, we couldn't even speak about that. So I began to talk to him about God's good gift of his sexuality and our spirituality as lesbian and gay Christians. I could see him listening intently. Then he kind of looked up at me and wrote on his tablet, "Gay angels?" The smile on my face was immediate, and I said, "Yes, Michael, there are gay angels. I know many. In fact, one of them died in the room right next door to you just a few months ago. His name was Ben, but there are many, many others." All of a sudden, he had this look on his face, and I just sensed him begin to relax. The last thing he wrote to me was, "Send them." I felt like I was in the presence of the divine through this incredible experience of knowing that Michael could not let go until he knew that gay angels would accompany him to the throne of God in some way. He wanted the kind of company that he trusted on this last piece of the journey. And he did not want to go anywhere that he was not welcomed as a gay person.